Okay, I think we're ready to get started here. We will now call to order the November 2nd meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission. Can we have the roll, please?
Commissioner Sibley.
Here.
Commissioner Fenster.
Here.
Commissioner Gayu.
Here.
Chairman Lane.
Here.
Commissioner Norton.
Here.
Commissioner Jacoby. Here. Commissioner Barnard.
Great,
Thank
thank you. All present and accounted for. Let's see, next on the agenda would be approval of the September 7th meeting minutes. We did not have a meeting last month. Are there any questions or corrections on the minutes from commissioners for September 7th? Yes? Okay. All right, Commissioner Barnard.
Yeah, I just want to compliment Maria on an absolutely fine set of minutes. This was an extremely tough job. I don't know many people, I definitely, having kept minutes for many organizations, I don't think I could have done it anywhere near that well, and was going to compliment her publicly.
Do I hear a motion in there?
And I move to adopt the minutes.
Thank you.
So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I got a motion to approve the September 7th minutes from Commissioner Barnard and a second from Commissioner Fenster. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None? Okay, the minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay, then we have report from the chair. I don't have anything specific to discuss tonight, so we will jump into communications from HBC staff liaison.
Good evening to the chair and members of the commission. Just a few items. Just wanted to give you an update on the Tower of Compassion. The cultural resource survey is still underway. I do expect a deliverable in a few weeks. Carl McWilliams, who is the contractor doing this, he unfortunately got hit with the latest COVID round, so therefore he's a little behind getting things done. But I communicated with him earlier this week, and he anticipates having that survey to me by Thanksgiving, hopefully. And I did speak with, drawing a blank on his name, but there was a gentleman from the SHPO's office who reached out because they were interested in possibly, doing something with it. And I said, well, funny you should ask. So there's a few of us on the same page. So I'm looking forward to seeing that survey report. So speaking of surveys, the survey plan, that is pending a proposal from our consultant for that project. I am nudging constantly, so I should have something for that hopefully tomorrow. I was hoping for today, but things happen. So that's the non-update on that. The other thing to note is the Saving Places Conference for 2024 is scheduled for January 31st through February 2nd in Boulder. Registration isn't open yet, but I will let you know once it is so that we can get interested people registered. One thing to note is that the conference does conflict with our February 2024 commission meeting, so we'll need to make a decision about whether or not that meeting should be held or canceled. And then finally, just on the Dickens/Mary Allen Barn, the final plat and construction plans for the associated development are still under review and should be finalized here in the very, very, very near foreseeable future. Once the final plat is recorded, the ownership of the barn and associated properties will transfer to the city once the final plat is recorded. Hopefully that will happen sometime in the next few weeks. Once that happens and once we have it under city ownership, we will then be able to pursue grants for restoration, as well as work on getting it landmarked and all of that as well. And there is this a monetary contribution that will go along with that as well for stabilization of the barn. Those are my primary items. If anyone has anything for me, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Any questions for staff from commissioners? Nope. All right, great. I think we'll handle the date of the meeting at our first meeting of the year. We usually take a look at the calendar and try to figure out what conflicts we'll have so we can handle that then.
Sure. I just wanted to make sure
Appreciate
that was
the
on
heads up.
everyone's radar ahead of time, so.
Definitely appreciate that. Okay. Commissioner Jacoby.
Sorry, a little slow on the button here. Just to follow up on our last meeting, we did agree that as a commission to recommend we change the code for allowing the planners to waive the fee for conservation overlay for neighborhood groups. And I believe Glenn said that the liaison was going to take this to city council and talk to them before we decided to do anything. I'm wondering if that had been done yet.
Going to defer to Glenn on this one.
I don't know, Rick. Yeah, that happened so quickly at the last HPC meeting. One thing I was going to talk about a little bit is we did present this at April 1, kind of the differences between CO and historic preservation. I don't think it's really a historic preservation duty, but nevertheless, certainly made a recommendation, and I assume the liaison is discussing that. I do know council has a meeting every couple of weeks where they talk about various commission board business, so, but I haven't heard anything one way or the other.
Thank you.
Thanks. That does remind me, though, for the zero reading on the revised demo ordinance, are we still trending December on that, or?
Yes, we are, December
Okay.
12th.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. All right. Commissioner Barnard?
Yes, while you're looking at dates for next year, could you also consider the, what your thoughts are and when to do the retreat? Sometimes if that gets delayed too long, or get deep into the first part of the year before we actually get together and talk about what we want to do that year. So I think one idea would be, since the February 1st is probably not going to happen, that maybe we do the following week and have the retreat that weekend, since we're going to, that way it'd be in February. It wouldn't be on top of another meeting, since we wouldn't have a meeting. So that would be my recommendation, to do it that. I don't know, do we usually do it on a Saturday? Yeah, so it'd be the Saturday after the 1st, would be the 10th, I think, just off the top of my head.
We can start looking for available rooms, meeting rooms that we could use for that. Hopefully without the confusion that we had with the last year's meeting room. So I'll work with Maria on identifying some spaces and possible days for that. So stay tuned.
Okay, great. Yeah, but I like that suggestion, so thank you. Okay. Thank you. We'll move on. So next section is public invited to be heard. This would be anybody who's here to speak on something that is not on the agenda. Is there anyone here for that? Nope. Okay. Then I'll go ahead and close the public invited to be heard, and we'll move on to the public hearing for 545 Collier Street, a remand by City Council to reconsider the request for certificate of appropriateness for window replacement at same. We've been advised by council that we ought to split this into potentially two parts in order to just follow the correct procedures. So the first thing that we are charged with as the commission is the actual remand of the request for certificate of appropriateness. So staff, do you want to give us an outline on this, or?
Sure. So the way I have my presentation ordered is very similar to the staff report. So update on kind of where we are, where we've been, and the criteria, outlining the criteria for each. And then you will consider first the certificate of appropriateness, and then if you do not approve the certificate of appropriateness, then you would take up the certificate of hardship request. So there will be two separate action items. Since the general information for both is pertinent to the other, I'll discuss it broadly, but then take it down and discuss the criteria for each.
Okay, and just, I guess a point of sort of order and organization. Can we have one hearing and just handle each of those two items separately as a commission?
I think that's fine.
Okay,
Mr.
that
Chairman.
would be cleaner. Okay,
Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Great. All right, so just as a recap, this item is a public hearing on remand from the City Council regarding a request to replace all of the historic windows at 545 Collier Street. This particular home was originally built in 1886 as a single-story cottage with a second-story addition and built in 1901. This addition resulted in this home becoming a very early example of the American Foursquare style. And per the nomination package for the Eastside National Register Historic District, this is the only home of that style within that district. Additionally, there was a cultural resources survey prepared for this property in 2002, and that was included in the original packet for this item. So to recap the process for this request, the Historic Preservation Commission denied the requested window replacement at its July 6th meeting with a vote of 4-2. The applicant then appealed this decision to City Council, who then remanded this request back to the commission with direction to consider hardship. So this evening, the commission will consider the requested certificate of appropriateness and then consider the certificate of hardship if the COA is denied. Hardship is not a criteria that the City of Longmont Municipal Code allows to be considered as part of a request for COA. And that is why these two items will be reviewed separately by the commission, so through two different motions and actions. So no new information has been provided by the applicant for this remand, so I will refer the commission to the previous and current packets for this item. The applicant is seeking to replace all of the original windows in her home at 545 Collier Street. As noted on the screen, Ms. Wolf's rationale for replacement are efficiency and heat loss resulting in high utility bills, inoperability of some of the windows, safety concerns over the historic glass, and limited availability of contractors who do window restoration. Several of council's questions related to an energy audit that the applicant stated had been performed on the home. This audit was not submitted as part of the original COA application, so at that time, staff was not available to evaluate its findings as they related to the requested COA. Following the appeal, staff requested a copy of this audit on multiple occasions from the applicant following City Council's remand of the item to the commission, but we never were provided this particular audit. So as a result, staff is still unable to evaluate whether the windows are in fact the primary source of heat loss in the home. So to recap, the applicant proposes to replace the existing windows with solid wood, double-paned, and double-hung windows from the Marvin Ultimate Wood line in a 1/1 style consistent with the existing windows. Ms. Wolf has indicated that she plans to incorporate the original windows into a future greenhouse on the property. So one thing to note is that the proposed replacement windows, while they are solid wood, are constructed from pine. Windows of the type and vintage currently installed in the subject property typically were originally constructed from hardwoods. There were just different qualities of wood that were used when this home was built. So there are 4 criteria that must be met in order to approve a request for certificate of appropriateness. All of these criteria must be met in order for a request to be approved. Staff is of the opinion that all of these criteria have not been satisfied, and therefore the standards for a certificate of appropriateness have been met. I'll take you briefly through the criteria and my analysis of this. So as to criteria 1, so these criteria are up on the screen for your reference. As to criteria 1, this property is not within a designated historic district that has adopted design guidelines. In the absence of design guidelines, the commission should use the Secretary of Interior standards for historic preservation and rehabilitation for evaluating exterior alterations to historic properties. These standards clearly state that historic features of a property shall be repaired rather than replaced unless they are deteriorated to a level where repair is not feasible. The applicant submitted photos of the windows proposed for replacement as part of the original application package. Staff remains of the opinion that the windows are not deteriorated to the point of requiring replacement and should be repaired. Therefore, this criteria has not been met. Regarding criteria 2, replacement of the original wood windows with modern replacements is discouraged for historic properties given the importance of windows for the integrity of architectural features. Photos of the existing windows provided by the applicant, again, depict windows that are not beyond repair and appear salvageable. There are windows that appear to be in need of reglazing, which would help reduce drafts and is actually a pretty simple process from my experience. Additionally, storm windows as well as certain window treatments could further reduce drafts and substantially improve efficiency without removing key historic features of the designated property. Staff does not think this criteria has been met either. Regarding criteria 3, the proposed replacement windows would match the 1/1 style of the existing wood windows. And additionally, these proposed replacements are solid wood rather than composite material, aluminum or vinyl, which is consistent with the original material. However, as I noted previously, the proposed replacement windows are pine, while historic windows are typically manufactured from hardwood, which does account for their longevity. Further, original windows are an important feature of historic homes and should be preserved whenever possible. As noted previously, the photos provided by staff do not depict windows that are not beyond repair. Staff is, again, of the opinion that this particular criteria has not been met. Finally, with regard to the 4th criteria, the proposed replacement windows are of the same style and a similar material as the windows to be replaced. While this criterion has been met, all 4 criteria must be satisfied in order to recommend approval of a certificate of appropriateness. So finally, I'll discuss the possible certificate of hardship. The criteria contained in the code for certificate of hardship are displayed on the screen. So with regard to the first question, will compliance with the regulations result in substantial economic burden? The applicant has stated that high energy bills are one of the factors driving the requested window replacement. Staff recognizes that the applicant's energy costs are relatively high. However, there are lower cost options that would improve the efficiency of the existing historic windows. The documentation submitted by the applicant indicates that replacement of the existing windows would cost in excess of $43,000. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, storm windows can have a similar cost-saving benefit as new double-paned windows, but at approximately 1/3 of the cost. The U.S. Department of Energy also states that energy-efficient window coverings such as cellular shades and drapes can also reduce heat loss and produce energy savings. The Department of Energy does also note that tightly installed cellular shades can reduce heat loss through windows by 40% or more, which equates to about a 10% heating cost savings. Links to these web pages are included in the staff report. So additionally, the Historic Preservation Commissioners expressed concern at the July 6th hearing that the windows may not be the only thing contributing to high energy bills. Staff has not been able to evaluate whether the existing windows are the primary cause of inefficiencies since the applicant did not submit the requested energy audit for review. Staff is not of the opinion that this first criteria for economic hardship has been met. So the next question is whether the property can be, quote, reasonably maintained in a manner consistent with code standards. As noted in the July 6th staff report, as well as comments from members of the commission documented in the minutes, from the meeting included as attachment 2. Window replacement is not the only option that would, for addressing energy efficiency concerns, and there are other options that exist that would meet the Secretary of Interior standards for historic preservation and rehabilitation. Options that the applicant should first pursue include installation of storm windows and reglazing the existing windows. The applicant should also pursue insulating exterior walls, which she indicated had not been done at the July 6th meeting. As noted above, there are numerous options for increasing energy efficiency in homes with single-pane windows that are readily available, less expensive, and would not require replacement of the existing historic windows. And again, the applicant has not provided new information, specifically the requested energy audit. Therefore, staff really is not able to determine whether this criteria has been met because we just don't have the information before us. So the final question is whether any other reasonable means of saving the property from deterioration, demolition, or collapse exists. As established at the July 6th HPC hearing, the existing windows are not deteriorated to a point where replacement is the only option, and photo documentation of the windows show that they are in relatively good condition. There are less drastic and more affordable measures than total replacement that may be undertaken to preserve the existing windows while also increasing energy efficiency. A concern cited by the applicant at the July meeting are the lead times for contractors who specialize in restoration of historic windows. We do acknowledge that the cited lead times are not ideal. However, they aren't unreasonably long. I do hear from other folks in the building trades that it's not just historic homes that contractors are tough to book. It's pretty much homes across the board in all disciplines, frankly. So, as with the previous criteria, the applicant has not provided new information for staff to determine whether this criteria has been met. So one other item I will note that was noted in previous reports is from the Cultural Resources Survey, and that survey, which was done in 2002, indicated that there had been minimal exterior alterations to this home since 1901. So it's, the windows are original to the home. So staff again recommends denial of the requested COA for total window replacement, finding that all 4 criteria have not been met as required by section 2.56. Regarding the certificate of hardship, staff finds that the criteria for economic hardship has not been met, given that there are lower cost alternatives to total window replacement. Regarding criteria for other hardships, the applicant did not provide the requested information, specifically the energy audit, for staff to determine whether the review criteria had been met, so we aren't able to make a conclusion on this. So, before turning it over to the applicant, I'm just going to outline staff. So the commission has 4 options regarding the certificate of appropriateness, as noted on the screen. You can approve the application as proposed. You can approve the application with conditions, including approving in part and denying in part. You can defer action on the application based on the need for additional information, or you can deny the application. If you deny the application, then you would then consider a certificate of hardship. The commission options for the certificate of hardship are also the same. You can approve the application as proposed. You can approve the application with conditions, including approving in part and denying in part. You can defer action on the application based on the need for additional information, or you can deny the application. And with that, I will conclude my presentation.
Thank you. Let's see, commissioners with questions for staff? No? Yes? Yeah.
We're not at a point where the only alternatives are storm windows versus rehab of the existing windows and frames, are we?
Not sure following the question.
Well, I for one would want to consider alternatives before, all alternatives, before considering storm windows. Both interior and exterior rehab of the panes and frames.
I think we have an opportunity as a commission to make suggestions as to possible solutions, right? It doesn't, we're not mandating any kind of particular solution other than evaluating the applicant's request to specifically take the windows out and replace them, right? What the alternatives, pretty open-ended.
Okay.
Commissioner Jacoby.
This isn't a question, but I do have a comment. I've thought about this a lot over the last 3 months, and I've been doing some internet searching. I looked at the Energy Star site that the applicant mentioned because she suggested that interior storm windows were inferior to replace double panes, which disagreed with the information that I saw. I went back to the Energy Star site, and if you read it, which is probably in the information that was presented, I didn't look at it, but you get 22% reduction in energy bills at our climate zone with double pane windows, and you get approximately 20% reduction in energy bills with interior storm windows. So again, this data from Energy Star that she was presenting was mispresented and agrees with the information I got from Lawrence Berkeley Labs. The other thing I wanted to mention, I looked at availability of interior storm windows, and there are several very good interior storm window companies and central manufacturers that will measure them in detail and ship them to you. This includes Indos, Energy Saver Windows, windowinserts.com. You measure your windows, order the inserts, they're installed either by yourself or maybe by a handyman. Indos Windows, which is one of the first ones, doesn't even require any mounting brackets, and so you can just install them yourself. I called the company, and they said the turnaround time right now is 3 to 5 weeks. So if these were measured and ordered now, they would be in probably before December. So there isn't a hardship in getting interior storm windows that I can see right now. And that's just the one manufacturer. I didn't call the others.
Okay, and just to make sure that we're following procedure here, these are questions, at this moment, we want questions for staff, and then we want to have the applicant have an opportunity to present their side of things before there's a discussion among the commission. So just, are there any more questions for staff? All right, thank you for the presentation. Would the applicant like to make some comments?
Hi. Do you need to say or do anything before I start talking?
I think if you just
Okay.
state your name, yeah.
My name is Elizabeth Wolf. I'm the owner of 545 Collier Street in Longmont. I didn't submit the energy assessment, one, because I was getting a new one from Efficiency Works, because I have done a couple of small things to the house since I got that 2 years ago, and I thought it might be smart to do a new one. And two was personal judgment. The city staff have been working against my best interests for a few months now, so I didn't feel like divulging a totally unfiltered report. My fear was that they would look at all the other things that could possibly be done instead of the things that make the most impact and send me home with a laundry list, a very expensive laundry list of things to do. So no, I didn't submit that to staff. Let me get to my notes. I apologize for the delay. So I didn't submit any additional financials because I kind of laid that out at the first hearing. I think you guys remember I laid out my finances very clearly for you. One thing I did omit, though, was my Excel bill. For some reason, this totally escaped me. In last February, it was $711. that meant that it was more than 60% of my disposable income, not 30 as quoted. So I wanted to correct myself there. For reference, last month my bill was $526, and that was when the heat was barely running. As I stated, I got a new assessment from Efficiency Works. I got the assessment for free because I'm far below 80% AMI. They usually charge for it, but I got it for free, which was super cool. They've been really helpful. They identified some other air leaks in the house, which kind of like got me hopeful. They did the air blower test, and then he went around with the heat gun. One thing to note was there was no noted heat transfer in the walls other than on the outside of my trim, which I clear caulked, which he said should solve the problem with air coming in through or heat being transferred through the walls. He identified some other air leaks in my home, including there's the roof of my porch comes partially over the second story, and the knee wall's not insulated. In fact, they don't do that in new construction either, I found out, which is pretty crazy. So he suggested insulating the knee wall or the roof over my porch, which would require cutting access, but well worth it, I think, because there was literally, when the blower test was going on, I don't know if you're aware or if you've ever been part of one, but it creates a zero pressure environment. So where there's air leak, you can feel the wind blowing through. And there was literally air coming in through the floorboards of my upstairs. I felt like I lived in a cheese grater. But he said that can be solved by insulating the roof of the porch. There were also air leaks along all the baseboards throughout the house, which he said clear caulk would solve, so I did that. And he also said that in lieu of glazing the windows, I could simply use clear caulk around the edges because I don't really know how to do that. Didn't have the time to do it before this hearing, so I did that as well. Let's see. I covered that. One of the facts that the assessor shared with me, and this is a unique program, Efficiency Works. I'm not sure how familiar you are with it, but it's quite unique nationwide. They harness the funds of Excel and the oversight of government to help people make their homes more efficient and often help financially to make those improvements. Windows are not qualifiable under that program, so he didn't even talk to me about replacing the windows. He shared the fact that 80% of heat loss is due to air movement. Storm windows are, as a rule, not airtight, right? We don't want to trap moisture in there. I have storm windows on my house right now. I installed them 3 weeks ago. I haven't seen any significant increase in the temperature, but we've only hit a low one time, and it was only for one night, so it's really not a fair sample. I'm hopeful that it'll at least stem, or kind of stop the bleeding over the winter. Those were over $9,000, so that was my entire down payment for windows and my entire savings, plus some credit, just if we're talking about financial hardship. But even if I did correct the operationability of the windows and put storm windows on the inside or outside, my windows are a pulley system, and I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's a hole drilled in the frame and ropes, and air pours in through that. During the blower test, I saw air pouring in. So I'd also have to change the mechanism of my windows and do away with original material and alter original material in order to make them into the peg ones, right? That are not airtight, but they're almost airtight. They're as close as you can get. It's also worth noting that my interior storms are also not airtight. They're tight, but they're not airtight. They don't stop airflow. So because I'm well below 80% AMI for Boulder County, Efficiency Works actually offered to pay for all insulation costs. They offered to pay for about $9,000 worth of insulation. I have some red tape to get through with Excel before I can do that. But I'm hopeful that that also will increase the efficiency of my home. I think that it's worth noting that the $43,000 windows would be financed, but my mortgage company is rather strict about what they'll let me finance on a home improvement loan. And windows qualify, but like things like Indos did not qualify for that kind of work. But that's not across all mortgage companies, I imagine. It's just mine. I spent a long time on the phone with them trying to get them to finance that so I didn't have to deplete my savings. So I think I would say that I didn't expect anyone to reconsider the certificate of appropriateness with any seriousness. I think y'all made your positions pretty clear on that in the beginning. I appreciate the recap, but it's really, I didn't have any hope for that. I would say, though, that even if you don't have the energy assessment in hand, I think I've laid out pretty clearly why it's a financial hardship year-round, having air going in and out of my home, decreasing the inefficiency. The efficiency works assessor actually noted that every 1.1 hours, all the air that's in my house ends up outside. So I'm reheating my home every 1.1 hours or recooling my home every 1.1 hours, which is hundreds of percentage points below the acceptable range. So I've made some improvements that I hope will get us through the winter. This past week, when it got to 9 degrees, we got a little bit below 50, and I felt like that was an improvement. Luckily, my children were with their dad that weekend, so we kind of lucked out. But I think what I would really like to see happen, one, is for this commission and maybe the city of Longmont to realize that maybe I know my finances a little bit better than others, and I'm laying them out as clearly as I can. Literally, my income is on the internet, just so you guys will possibly consider that this is a financial hardship for me. It's frankly embarrassing, but here we are. And also that, I lost my train of thought. I was so wrapped up in the embarrassment that I lost my train of thought. So I guess that's it. Oh, and then hopefully after making all of these adjustments, I would like, if the hardship is denied, I'd like to come back in the spring after I've had a winter in that home with the improvements that I have made and reevaluate. And I kind of feel like Charlie Brown with the football, but I'm going to keep trying because logic tells me that it's the windows. So I'm going to keep trying. So yeah, that's all I got. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you. I will say, I'm very glad to hear that you got that blower door test. That was one of the things I was going to ask if you had done, because that's a pretty important piece of information, and you're exactly right. That is often a far bigger question than many others. I'll open it up to questions from other commissioners, if anybody has any. Commissioner Jacoby.
Just a quick question. Did you have the blower door test before or after you had the interior storms placed on?
Before.
Because the interior storms cover those openings for the pulleys in my house anyway. I believe they do.
They don't. They
go
don't. The
inside
ledge on
the-
my windows are 1 inch, a little bit less than 1 inch, and a little bit less than half an inch, depending on which floor you're on, because the windows are slightly different. And the sill of the Indo is about 1 inch wide, and you stick it in, and then on the outside of that trim is the pulley system. So, because the steps are small, and on my particular trim, the pulleys are on the outside. But no, I didn't have them in when they did the blower test, so I have actually no idea how effective they truly are, which is why I'm saying I might like to come back in spring if you deny hardship.
Other questions? No, I do have a couple. So I just wanted to recap that you'd insulated the attic, right?
Yeah.
And the upper floor walls are framed, right? They're a wood frame wall.
They are wood frame walls.
Have they been insulated?
As far as I can see, when I have cut into it, there is insulation in there. It's minimal. It's very minimal and it's very deteriorated. They deemed the attic insulation not sufficient. So I had an impression that might be the case because I kind of did what I could afford at the time. But they said it should be deeper, and they also said that they would like to come up on the joists. I think that's what they said. Come up like where the wall comes up the sides
Right.
with insulation. And that's part of what Efficiency Works will cover.
Right. If they can cover insulating the upper walls, that will be a big deal. The lower floor walls are brick, and I assume they're basically like an 8 inches of brick and just lath and plaster. Do you know what
There's
they are?
lath and plaster on the interior walls. I've never attempted to drill into an exterior wall. No, yes, I have. Yeah, no, there's lath and plaster on top of it. So there's brick and lath and plaster.
Right.
Yeah.
So, one of the things about that lower wall, basically, if you've done a little insulation, you're familiar with the R value.
I've talked to a lot of experts about it,
Yeah,
more than
so
I'd like to.
bigger's better, right? That's why they want more in your attic.
Mm-hmm.
Normally, today, you'd put 50, an R50 in an attic, something like that. So it's a big number. A brick wall with lath and plaster is an R3. Okay? Which is basically a window. I mean, it's almost a window. So those brick walls are it might not show up the same way on an infrared camera, but it's just math. There's a lot of heat transfer through the wall. It works a little differently because it is a thermal mass and it'll absorb a little, heat during the day and so on. But basically, those lower walls are a problem. And if your upper walls are not really well insulated, then it's basically the same thing, right? You're losing a ton of heat through those walls, through all of that surface area. So if you can the brick is difficult, obviously, because
Yeah, they have ways of doing it, though. They drill into the outside and then they.
yeah, but that only
snake
works
it
if you have a
down.
cavity. So if you can get them, if you have a cavity there, you can fill that cavity. That would work for the upper floor walls.
Yeah, they didn't, they wanted to go from the inside upstairs and from the outside downstairs. I got a couple bids. The problem is that Efficiency Works didn't cite any issues with that, so they didn't recommend it, and they didn't offer to pay for it. So the guy spent like 3 hours at my house, and we talked about all sorts of things, and we barely even talked about the windows because I told him it was a non-starter when he walked in. But he didn't, I asked specifically about the walls.
Yeah.
And I know the math makes sense. Unfortunately, they're not going to cover it because they didn't find anything wrong, because I guess their tools didn't pick up anything wrong there. So, and like I said, I spent all my money on Indos, so.
Well, I think it would be worth finding other ways of potentially treating those upper floor walls, or getting somebody to take another look at it, or finding a way to see if that insulation can't be improved, because that would be a pretty big deal. I know there was a lot of conversation at the council hearing about the HVAC system you put in and how efficient it was and that sort of thing. Do you know what kind of efficiency that system has? Like if it's a 80% efficiency or 90 or 96 or whatever? Do you have any idea what that might be?
I don't know that figure off the top of my head. I do know that I installed it 2 years ago, brand new. No, 2.5 years ago, brand new. Two units, furnace and AC up and furnace and AC down. I do know that.
Yeah. I have some concerns about whether whoever did that for you sized that correctly, given the temperature, low temperatures that you're seeing, because they should have basically accounted for the fact that the walls are very low insulation value, right, and that you would get a lot of heat back.
Yeah, we had long discussions about that, especially because it was kind of a puzzle, because we were trying to find a place for it, because I didn't want to involve a historical engineer to like break through the two stories. So we definitely talked at length about that. I don't think that any HVAC system could compete with air leakage through windows, though, and baseboards and floorboards. I don't think it can compete. And if it could compete, it would still cost a lot of
Yes,
money.
yes.
So
The efficiency of that system makes some difference, but you're correct, and the air leakage is a big thing, so.
he did mention, though, that it's not ideal that the HVAC system is in the attic, and that insulating the HVAC system from the attic down was going to be part of what they were going to cover in insulation.
So the furnaces are in the attic?
One furnace in the attic and one furnace above my kitchen.
Okay,
There's no other space.
yeah.
So
And do those, apologies for the weeds, but it helps, I think I'm trying to help a little bit too. So the house previously had like a baseboard system, right?
yes, it did.
Yeah, so.
A boiler system.
Right. And so one of the things about these old homes is that what those systems did is it created a little heat curtain up against the outside wall that then helped prevent the heat transfer through the house to the outside. So when you change to an HVAC system, that compromises that effect.
Right.
The grills essentially for where the heat comes out. Where does the heat come out? Did they run it out to the windows in the floor, or does it just come out like a sidewall?
It's in the ceiling.
Yeah,
The vents are
okay.
all in the ceiling.
Okay, so you're losing a little bit of the efficiency of the old home in the way that system operates versus
Yeah.
an older system that would have actually prevented some. So that does create a slightly more challenging condition with
Yeah.
that new system.
I think my one thing was I wanted AC, and I thought, why am I going to have baseboard heaters and HVAC for AC? And so we put in heaters because we thought they'd be more efficient. Also safer because they get hot, and my kids are small.
Okay, well, I appreciate the time.
Yeah.
Any other questions? No. Thank you. So I will go ahead then and open up the public hearing. If there's anyone who would like to speak on this matter, you can approach the podium, go ahead and say your name and address, and you get 3 minutes. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak? No? Okay, all right, thank you. I will go ahead and close the public hearing and then open it up for discussion with the commissioners. Okay, all right, well then, what I'm going to do is I'm going to suggest that we, at least at the moment, consider the certificate of appropriateness. Again, as a reminder, the hardship component is not really a factor in that, so in the absence of new information, I'd entertain a motion about whether to approve or deny the certificate of appropriateness. Yeah, Commissioner Gayu.
I would move to deny the application, the certificate of appropriateness.
Okay, so that is moved by Commissioner Gayu and seconded by Commissioner Norton. Is there any discussion on the certificate of appropriateness? Okay, seeing none, I will call for a vote on that. All those in favor of the motion to deny, please say aye. Aye. Any of those opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, so we have Commissioner Barnard and Commissioner Fenster opposed. Okay, so now we're on to the certificate of hardship. So I'd like to see if there's any commissioner discussion on that. Commissioner Barnard.
I read through the staff report and was frankly hoping for more information. I understand the comments made by the applicant, but the key to voting for certificate of hardship is reviewing financial information. and I'm not comfortable with just a verbal presentation on what energy audit said or these other things. So I would either, I don't know if there's a way to get a copy of that and then defer any action now until we actually get to see that and make, see whether that's valid as far as hardship is concerned. And secondly, whether that the applicant is willing to submit financial information to us if they're not willing to submit it to the staff. This is an open hearing, they could submit it here, or submit it as additional information. So without that information, I don't see how how I'm supposed to consider hardship, actually. So I'm uncomfortable voting for it at this time, and would hope that there's a way we could get the information. If that information can't be made available to the commission, then I wouldn't be able to vote for it because I wouldn't have enough information.
Thank you. Commissioner Jacoby?
In a contrasting view, if the applicant won the lottery tomorrow, I still don't see approving this on the basis of financial hardship when we have data that shows interior storm windows work as well at a quarter to half the cost. So if we're looking at cost and financial hardship there, I don't think there's an argument for double pane windows. I think you could argue that money would be necessary for better insulation, better caulking and sealing the house, because the house clearly has multiple problems. And I hope, with that $9,000 grant and getting some of that insulation put in there, that you can get a lot of this taken care of. It would be interesting to see how, if you can get that insulation put in time for the cold season, between that and the interior storms, how things go. But again, even if you won the lottery tomorrow, it still makes more financial sense for the similar outcome to have interior storm windows, which meets the criteria that we have to use, whether to approve or deny replacement of windows.
Okay, thank you. Other commissioners, comments or? No? Yeah, I'd like to weigh in. I tend to agree with Commissioner Jacoby. From a financial standpoint, it's hard to see economic burden when we can say that the storms are going to be less expensive. So there's dollars to be spent if in insulation and other improvements. Basically, if you'd come in here in July and said, I want to put historic storm windows on my house, and we had a decent detail, it would have been done. It would have very likely been approved, and you'd have storm windows. That's the criteria that we're given to follow. We don't have, as a commission, all of our directives, all of our standards, everything that we're supposed to hold ourselves to say that the windows, if they're in decent condition, and they certainly are in decent enough condition given the measurements that we're being asked to follow, that storm windows are the appropriate solution. And we have data that say they perform maybe not exactly as well, but really, really close. And we know that they cost less, so that you have money to spend on other things. I actually had, because we didn't talk about this, but I had to put it out there, I actually talked to there's a restoration specialist, a carpenter, that is doing the work on the Callahan House, and we can provide you that information if you like, but it's Empire Carpentry. And they're actually the fifth one down on the State Historic Preservation Office's list of contractors. They're in Fort Collins. They could provide a quote on historic window repair in 2 to 3 weeks. So they're they're potentially backed up a little bit in their work, but they're scheduling work right now. They're highly, highly competent, doing work in Longmont and doing work for other municipalities. So it's like, this is where this needs to go with a historic home, with a landmarked home, okay? And so I don't find that there is any other hardship, because it could be reasonably maintained. And there are reasonable means of saving the property. So there are paths. And so. Well,
They may not take a job of mine, like as small as mine.
no, actually, well, and this is maybe a little bit inappropriate, and I'm happy to talk to you afterwards, but they would actually take a small job. He specifically mentioned that even a small job would be great, because they like small jobs to fill in between the big jobs. So I would encourage you to, at the very least, have the conversation. There's really no loss in having the conversation. So I just can't see a reason to support that certificate at this time myself. If there are any other comments from commissioners, if not, I'd entertain a motion. Oh, okay, I'm going to go with Commissioner Jacoby and landed first here. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Gayu.
I would move to deny the certificate of hardship.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to deny the certificate of hardship from Commissioner Gayu and seconded by Commissioner Norton. Any further discussion on the matter? Okay, yes.
No, I know you usually call for the ayes and yays, but I just want to let you know that I plan to abstain. So if you could call for that too.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all those in favor of the motion to deny certificate of hardship, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? And abstentions? Okay, the record would show that Commissioner Barnard abstained, and the rest of the commissioners voted to deny.
Mr. Chairman, do you have the appeal process language concerning the denial for the applicant? If not,
Talking about the code language?
the 30-day appeal period to file an appeal with city council.
Okay, I don't have that in front of me, no.
Let me pull it up 1 second just so we can read it for the record. It's 30 days, right? Apologies, I'm still trying to find it. Just one moment. Oh, 7 days. Okay, and so just for the benefit of the record and for the applicant, under code provision 2.56220C1, a party agreed by a final decision of the commission, which the denial of the certificate of appropriateness and the certificate of hardship do constitute final decisions of the commission, may be appealed to the city council. Appeals of the city council shall be filed in writing with the city clerk, with a copy to the liaison to the HPC, which is Ms. Hewitt-Epperson, within 7 days from the date of the commission's decision, which is today, meaning that the appeal period expires close of business November 9th. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay, we will move on to new business, which is commissioner interviews for the 2024.
Yes, so essentially, we had one applicant for the commission, and that would be Commissioner Fenster, who is currently an alternate applying for a regular position. Under advice, so the clerk has indicated that we do not need to go through a formal interview process if it's a current member, whether it be alternate or regular, who is applying for a position. So with that, I will let you discuss it, but otherwise, we have been advised by the clerk that we can accept Mr. Fenster as a regular member if that is your choice.
Okay, so I guess that's essentially, does any commissioner, other than Mr. Fenster, have a objection to Mr. Fenster continuing on this commission? I'm gonna put you all on the spot.
You step out of the room for that discussion?
That was very good.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Okay, seeing none, welcome to the commission permanently. Or semi-permanent, as permanently as it gets. Yeah.
Thank you, I feel honored.
Okay.
One more. I provided my credentials in a rather formal format, and I don't know whether they were ever provided to the commission itself.
Those were not provided at this point, so I would need to get those from the clerk. Again, we were advised that we did not need to go through the formal application process or the formal interview process, but if anyone is interested in receiving those credentials, I'm happy to obtain them from the clerk and share them.
Yeah, I would feel more comfortable if they were shared.
Okay. I can do that.
Fair enough, thank you. Okay, it does not appear that we have any prior business to discuss, so from here, we are down to comments from HPC commissioners. Do any commissioners have something they'd like to share with us? Commissioner Jacoby.
Yes, at the last meeting, Councilman Rodriguez mentioned that City Council asked the Historic Preservation Commission to make a recommendation on the Historic East Side Neighborhoods Conservation Overlay application. He mentioned that at the very end of the meeting. It's not on the agenda here, but to start the discussion, I would like to move that we recommend City Council direct planning to pursue the proposed conservation overlay with the two waivers that the Historic East Side neighborhood is requesting, which are namely waiving the planning fee, which we discussed and approved as a group at the last meeting, and waiving the requirement to notify those outside the conservation overlay's proposed borders, which is something that I believe is already, planning is able to do, but going ahead with that recommendation. So there's not a lot new there, but again, I think we should have a formal motion and present that so we can tell City Council that, yes, we do go ahead with, or we agree with going ahead with a conservation overlay. So I make that motion.
Second.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second on the floor, discussion, but I want to, yeah. So is this something that really ought to, again, is not appropriate for this point of the meeting and ought to be on an agenda, or you just are going to comment on where we are with status?
I think that would be best if
Yeah.
it was actually published on a application and we could give you all the background.
Yeah, so again, well, I think what I like, just procedurally, I like to, this point of the meeting is more about bringing things to attention, right? But then we ought to, rather than to just make a motion and in this, I'd like to make sure we have it on the agenda, we get a staff report for it, we have a discussion, there can be a public hearing, there could be notification. We've had a few folks in here saying, you handled material that wasn't published and had a discussion, and we would have liked to come in and provide public comment. So I think there is some duty even though it's relatively sparse typically, right? To publish that and have a little quick discussion about it. if that's fair. I keep pushing back, but, so, yeah. Where are you? There you are. Go ahead.
Okay, so I would like to withdraw the motion. I would request that it be placed on the agenda for the next meeting. To be honest, I feel like even a geologist would be frustrated with the timeframes that we work under sometimes. And when would be the appropriate time to make a motion then, unless all motions, are you saying, again, I'm not very good with these rules. The best time, you make motions with regards to issues that are already on the agenda. Is that
Correct, right. So we're acting on
Nothing new.
agenda items. And if
Only
you
on
want
agenda
to
items.
put something on next month's agenda to talk about, then
Okay.
this is the appropriate time to do that.
Okay.
And then we put it on the agenda, it's published. Everyone out there who looks at HPC knows that it's going to be a little discussion about it. It might take 3 minutes, but there's at least an opportunity for public to come in and comment on it and the staff to be prepared to answer
Right.
the question and so on and so forth.
Sounds good. Okay, great, thank you.
Okay.
So I do withdraw the motion for now.
All right, thank you. So we will get that on that point. Okay, thank you. Can we, Commissioner Fenster, can I get the second for the withdrawal? Thank you. So can we get this item on the agenda for the December meeting and a little,
If
Yeah.
the commission agrees, I
Yeah,
guess,
yeah.
and maybe that should be the motion, to put it on a future agenda.
okay,
So
gotta find you here. Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and beat a dead horse because I know this is not the first time that you have brought this up, and I feel like we have requested that this be on an agenda. So I will make the motion that the conservation easement overlay goes on the agenda for the December meeting.
Okay. So we have a motion to add an item to next month's meeting for the conservation overlay. Motion made by Commissioner Norton and seconded by Commissioner Barnard. All those, well, let's see, any further discussion? Nope. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Okay. So we'll get that on the agenda.
And
Thank
if I
you.
said it wrong, just do whatever he keeps asking for, please. For the love of God, let's have a good discussion.
Okay, let's see. I have got Commissioner Gayu here with comments.
I actually happened to very unfortunately notice that the house at Third and Collier is gone. The whole property is gone. It's a little house, it was probably 1910s, 1920s, and just the whole thing's gone. And wondered perhaps why we didn't see a demolition hearing about that.
We'll need to look into that because I did not see, I don't recall seeing any requests for that. Unless you're referring to the garage, because I
Nope.
believe,
Oh, the whole thing is leveled. Yeah,
interesting, okay.
yeah. It was there and then it was gone. Yes. It was gone, and now the whole property has been leveled, so all the trees were taken down, the house is gone, everything is gone.
So it sounds like a bunch of us are gonna have a field day, especially if the trees were taken down.
Yes, there are probably 6 to 10 very mature trees that were taken down. They probably weren't super healthy, I think they were cottonwoods, but yeah, no, at the house, everything is gone.
Does
So-
that raise any questions?
Yes, that's why I bring it up,
I don't mean to.
because we're supposed to.
I do mean to be naive, frankly, but does it raise any questions as to whether there are historical preservation procedures in place that amount to laws and regulations that might have been violated in this case? And if not, why not?
Well, when a demolition permit goes through on a property that is more than 50 years old or within the original square mile of Longmont, it is supposed to come to the preservation staff for their evaluation. And then if they deem it so, they are supposed to bring it to us for review and comment.
And I assume that did not happen.
Did not happen.
So what's missing?
That's an excellent question. We'll need to do some investigation on this because it's not ringing any bells as far as I don't recall doing any sort of review of any sort. I'm looking at the Google Street View on this right now, and I do not recall reviewing anything for that, because that definitely would have come up to the commission.
Yeah, I mean, it's-
Again, I'm trying to figure out what's missing. Was the property not properly registered? Was a
doesn't
regulation
matter.
violated?
it doesn't matter if it was registered or not. It's within the original mile of Longmont, and it's more than 50 years old.
Well, next, is there a reason why the property owner might not have known? Reasonably might not have known.
It doesn't matter. The permitting department should have forwarded it to the preservation department.
Should we be
if there
saying
was
something
permit.
to the permitting department?
I think that's the point that Commissioner Gaia is making, to alert staff to find out.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll look into this because that's.
I mean,
concern-
sadly, it's
It's
too
gone.
late. It's gone.
Yeah.
But completely gone, like, yeah, down to complete dirt. So there is absolutely nothing left. So,
Would the
Yeah.
property owner not have known? Is there?
I mean,
is there-
again, it's not up to the property owner to know that. When they go for a permit, the permitting department is supposed to do their job, which is to let the planning department know.
Well, and the
So.
company demoing
Yeah,
needs
somebody else needs to know.
I mean, something did not
Something
happen,
wrong there,
obviously.
yeah.
Yeah, so it'd be good to find out what it is, and if there's anything we can do to not have that happen again, that'd be great.
What, for example, could we do?
Something has to happen within the city's, procedures, I would guess.
As you know, we've spent quite a bit of time
Yes, we
reviewing that
did.
section of code.
Hence my frustration.
So I'm looking right now to see if I can even find if a permit was pulled, because
That
it
also is a problem.
could
yes.
very well, I'm thinking it very well could have happened without a permit. I just want to confirm the address. You said southwest corner of Third and Collier?
Yep.
Okay, 251 Collier. Bear with
Yeah,
Remember
me.
the penalties conversation we had on
Yes, exactly. It's-
You wanna
I think
comment
the
on this
current
issue
penalty is
or
what,
something else?
$50?
Okay.
It's-
Well,
Yeah, that's why we need penalties for this sort of thing, is to,
Commissioner Jacoby had a
Penalties
comment.
with teeth. I just wanted to comment that this isn't the first time this has happened. It was 2 years ago, it happened on the 800 block of Emery. So if this has happened twice in 2 years, I think it's 2 years, this is something we really have to think about, the procedures involved.
So I am not finding a demolition permit for this property. I'm seeing permits, I'm seeing right-of-way work that was issued in April, but I'm not seeing anything in our system that has anything to do with demolition or frankly, any work on this property.
well, you're welcome.
Yeah, but the next.
Let the chair recognize you there, Mr. All right, Commissioner Fenster.
That may raise a question as to whether our criteria, I should say our regulations, are complete so that a property owner would know or would have had to know or whether if there was a violation here, it should be pursued. You know, just letting it go seems inappropriate.
Commissioner
Well,
Gayu.
anybody, it's not the property owner's requirement to know. They hired a contractor, who knows? They have to pull a permit in which to demolish a property, and they illegally did not do that. One would hope that there could be some recourse in their business licensing, that they did not follow the laws, but I don't hold up high hope
But
for
the
that.
property, again, but the property owner is not responsible at all?
They hired a contractor
That's not my
to
point.
do the work, and it's the contractor's job to pull a permit for the work that they perform.
I'm having trouble believing that the property owner has no responsibility.
We just found out about it, maybe
Right.
rather.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
it does become a code issue, yeah, I'd
Yes.
just soon
Yeah.
we not discuss it right now.
I'll look into this and have a report at the next meeting. But again, as I'm looking through our permitting system, I'm not showing anything that was pulled for this property.
Okay, well, fascinating. A whodunit for next week or next month. All right, any other commissioner comments? No? All right, thank you. We do not have our council liaison with us this evening, so that gets us to adjournment. Motion to adjourn by Commissioner Barnett and seconded by Commissioner Norton. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you much for your time. Thank you, staff.